Creating Your Own Reality. Hello, everyone. My name is Tessa. I'm with the Futurist Mindset Show, and Reagan Rodriguez, who is your host and a futurist that teaches stratosphere wealthy legacy families how to become impact investors. Hello, Reagan.
Hello, Tessa. How are you doing on this afternoon?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing better than I deserve. I do. And I like this topic that we're saying, creating your own reality. It's
I'm
interesting.
excited.
Yeah. I really didn't even know what I was going to talk on today, as you know, until this morning. That was when I sent you the email and I thought, creating your own reality. And the reason why I thought of this is a story I remember once reading about Deion Sanders. Do you know who that is? He was a baseball and football player. And so it reminded me of that story. And then from there, I was thinking of some others. So I want to kind of break this talk up in 4 points. Number one, backwards way of looking at the world, which is a good thing. You'll see why I say that. The second is you want to develop a reputation for living in your own world. Okay. And when I give an example of someone like that, and I'll get into it later, is like Yogi Bear. You probably hear his stories that he's got a lot of these philosophies that people make jokes about. Well, that's what Yogi Bear was known for, was, having a reputation for living in his own world. The third thing I want to go over is how exceptional thinkers see the world with their own lenses, or maybe I should say they invent the lens. So my previous talks, I was talking about how to get in the door with the family office, what they look for, the kind of people they want to be associated with. And then you look at certain people, and I'm going to think of someone like Michael Dell that has his own family office. He really also saw the world through another lens. Another example of somebody that has done a lot of work. He built the Bright Line train that goes from Miami all the way up to even now Orlando, Sir Richard Branson. And that's a really different way of thinking in his mindset as well. So I'll get into that. The fourth topic that I want to go over is in the same vein, mindset. Okay, that mindset has become an obstacle for some people that want to achieve success. Yet, what you'll learn within just a few minutes of this talk is how I want you to maybe develop on your own mindset, your own attitude, so that you can be that successful performer. So let's get started here on the first one. I said backwards way of looking at the world. There is a story I read, and I wrote this down about a gentleman named, and I didn't know who this guy was. Supposedly, he's a NFL Super Bowl champion, Stuart Anderson. Had you ever heard of him before, Tessa?
No,
I had.
Stuart Anderson.
Well, the story, though, about him was not only that he's got this exceptional way of thinking and this mindset. When he was in high school, he wanted to be a pro basketball player. And so he played both football and basketball, but he was really, really good at basketball. And in his senior year, he brought them to the state championships. And one of the things that Stuart Anderson was known for was he was a 50% shooter. Which is pretty rough. Think about it. You pass it to him. Yeah, he may not make it 50, but the other 50%, it's 2 points or 3 points. This guy used to, was a 50% shooter. And so in the state championship game, the kind of play that the coach was, pass it to Stuart Anderson. The diagram was pass it to Stuart, pass it to Stuart. Well, he missed 26 shots in a row. So he was 0 for 26, but he still did have a good team because they were doing okay. So here's what happened. 30 seconds left, and they're 1 point behind. Coach brings everyone in and says, all right, guys, change the play. here's what we're going to do. You can already guess this, Tessa. They're not going to pass it to Stuart Anderson, right? Right? I mean, he hasn't made any. He's over 26. So we're going to pass it to, I guess, the second string person. All of a sudden, Stuart Anderson gets up and goes, Coach, you cannot do this play. You got to understand, it's going to go in if you pass it to me. I mean, there are no doubts. None. I mean, it's like 100% it's going to go in. And now this is a high school basketball coach, but one of his people he looked up to was the basketball coach for the Boston Celtics. And Larry Bird was known for being that person that always took the shot, even when he was having an off day. And one day, an announcer, and I think this is why the basketball coach who really looked up to this, and I don't know his name, he was the basketball coach for Larry Bird during those days, an announcer said, it must really irritate you that Larry Bird kept hogging the ball and shooting, although he wasn't. And he said, oh, no, not at all. The only kind of shooter I don't like is the one that stops shooting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the other thing that the coach said is that when someone is very confident, they may not be logical. See if I remember the exact words. You want to, I think the words were, I wrote down a lot of notes here. I don't know which one it was, but I think it was something about here we go. You can't be logical and confident at the same time. I wanted to say exactly what he had said. You can't be logical and confident at the same time. So Stuart Anderson, getting back to the story. You got to pass it to me, coach. You got to pass it to me. Well, the coach saw that he had so much conviction. He was just, all right, guys, never mind. Pass it to Stuart. So what do you think happens? They pass it to him, makes it in within a few seconds. And then, so you hear that and you're like, okay, I got warm and fuzzies. Well, but what's the point here, right? Let's get to the point. The point is media is there. They put the microphone in front of them, cameras there. They wanted to know what happened. You're normally known as being a 50% shooter. What happened? I mean, what? He said, well, here's the thing. I'm a 50% shooter. Right, but why did they pass it to you? And what made you so confident? He goes, because I hadn't made any. And I'm normally a 50% shooter. So he says to the announcer, and this is why I say backwards way of looking at the world. He says, look, math and statistics say that it's going to go in for 100%. So the announcer says, okay, well, with that kind of logic, what if you would have made all of them? Then should the coach not have passed the ball to you? Stuart Anderson thinks about this. He goes, wait a minute, you're saying, what if I would have been 26 for 26 and would have gotten all in? He goes, yeah. And he goes, oh, then you definitely want to pass the ball to me. The announcer goes, why? And he goes, well, because I'm hot, man. I'm 100%. It's going to work. The announcer says, well, you can't have it both ways. And he really said this. Are you ready for the last words? He said, I can because I create my own reality. Now on that, now let's go to point number 2. You want to have a reputation for living in your own world. If you just Google all the Yogi Bearisms out there, you'll see all the stuff that he did. And I remember once hearing a story about him being at a pizza parlor, but I wanted to tell the story exactly the way it was. And I couldn't remember how many slices, but I understood the point. So I literally Googled it just about 10 minutes before we got on. And I literally just put Yogi Bear at a pizza parlor, how many slices? And it really came up. It was the first thing that came up. And let me tell you the way it was. He walks into this pizza parlor where people knew he was. They had seen him, and he orders his normal, I think it was this large pepperoni pizza. And he says, do you want me to slice your pizza, cut in 4 slices or 6? Yogi Bear thinks about it and goes, I'm actually not really that hungry today. Make it 4. Do you see that? Most people would look at that and say, he's a dum-dum. I mean, the pizza's pizza, it's the same size. What difference does it make? And when I first heard that story, I thought to myself, that's to show you how much of a genius the guy is. What if his mindset, he knows so much about performance at your peak, at the best, and he says to himself, if there's only 4 slices, then I'm going, maybe he did that with running. If he needed to run a mile and he knew that this one track he would have had to go around 4 times, but on one of them only twice, and he thought it makes it easy. So he knew his mindset, and he knew if I want to finish all the pizza, cut it in 4 slices versus 6. So
Got it.
what was he known for? Having that reputation for living in his own world. And if you look at his story, if you just see the amount of failures and what he went through, he was a mental giant. He was. Third thing, exceptional thinkers see the world in their own lens. And I mentioned that they even invent their lens. And this is the story I began with Deion Sanders. And did you know that he played football and baseball at the same time? You knew that? There's another fact I didn't know. I wanted to be accurate on this fact here because the way I had first read the story was that it was the Atlanta Falcons, but it's the other way around. It was the Braves, which is the baseball team. So what happened was he was a walk-on with the Atlanta Braves. He had never played baseball. I mean, he had on a playground before, but that was it. So he walks in and he speaks to the owner of the team. So you got to figure the owner of the team is probably worth quite a bit of money, right? He's got quite a mindset, as you can imagine. And he walks in and he says to him, not only am I going to be the rookie of the year, I'm going to help you guys go to the World Series, and you will go to the World Series the first year while I'm on it. And by the way, I won't accept any less than $4 million.
Wow,
Now, this was
that's brave.
Oh yeah. And this is way before the A-Rods of the world. So the owner of the team says, look, you don't just come in here demanding that when you're just a walk-on and people don't pay. He interrupts him. Here's the way it's going to work. I'm going to write you a check for $2 million now. And then later when you see me on day one, you're going to write me another $2 million. I Googled it, by the way, and you know how much he ended up that they gave him? I literally Googled Deion Sanders, walk on. How much did he make? $5 million. Although they gave him, So he said, I won't accept any less than 4. He ended up with $5 million that year. And yes, he was rookie of the year. And he did take them to the World Series. And he went to the Super Bowl with the Atlanta Falcons that year as well.
Wow.
Then it gets better. He says, oh, one other thing. He says to the owner and the coach when they're there, and he goes, my nickname and what you're going to be calling me is Prime Time.
Oh.
and the guy, you knew that was his nick. They called him Prime Time. And the owner said, that's not the way it works. I mean, coach can tell you, generally when someone has a nickname, they're named out by the other players or maybe the media, but nobody makes up their own
name.
And he says, I know they don't, but I am creating my own reality. And I've been told, I've never seen it, but someone told me that he's got this big mansion in Atlanta, gates, in the front of the gates, and it says Prime Time. The gates. Oh, and the reason why, when the owner said, I don't get it, why are we going to call you Prime Time? He goes, oh, here's why. Because the bigger the game, the better I am. That's why. That's why you're going to call me Prime Time.
Interesting.
So that's creating your own reality. Now let's go to the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned how your mindset can become an obstacle. And if you want to become a successful performer, here's what you can do. Change how you think. Okay. Thinking is not predetermined, right? It's not like the color of your eye. How you think is the state of mind. So maybe you might need to choose a new lens through which to see the reality. And I'm going to give a quick story on this I thought of because I learned this from, who's on our team, Jimmy Sevilla, that works with me.
Yeah.
And one of the things is no matter what happens or what goes on, the best part of them comes out. And that doesn't to me. To me, I feel like if I'm under pressure, I might be a little short with people. I might snap at people. And one of the things that I thought about is like orange juice. I love oranges. I should just say orange. And what's the best part about oranges is the juice. And I know that whenever I kind of lose my cool, I'll always give the excuse to that person and say, I got a lot going on right now. You don't know what's going on. Well, yesterday, end of my day, as I normally do, I really conclude my day. I live in Florida. I'm blessed in that way. Oranges are great, 12 out of 12. Open it up and I just savor it while I'm eating it. And it hit me yesterday, but more even today, that if you put pressure on an orange, any way that you could, you get a hammer and beat it, you can stomp on it, you can put it behind a car and roll over it. Doesn't matter what you do to it, the best part of it is what comes out. And it doesn't matter what kind of pressure. So we need to remember that as well, that no matter what pressure is going on or what we're dealing with, it's not because of that reason that you responded in the way that you did.
Right. It's a choice.
What comes out of you, very good. Yeah. Another story I'm going to think on that one that just reminded me. I used to kind of, I don't know what you'd say, kind of quasi-date this gal when I was young, that her name was Priscilla. And when I say quasi-date, it kind of consisted of, she'd go to church with me and then we'd have lunch afterwards and then we'd like take the bus, go to her place, and it was about it. So one day she'd said, well, why don't we go to my church? We always seem to go to yours. So we said, okay. I said, okay. And it was small. It was an older kind of church and mostly African-American. And I noticed every so often, like there would be a sermon going and then music would pop in. Everybody would stand up and we'd sing. And then a few seconds, not minutes, we'd sit down. And then he'd keep preaching. So afterwards, she goes, well, what did you think of my church? I said, gosh, I liked it. There was a lot of music. I liked that. There was a lot. I said, but why would they do it in between the sermon? And she said, well, did you notice how there was one old man that would stand up first? And then I go, no, I'm not. She goes, well, we've just gotten good at it. I said, good at what? And she says, well, there's this elderly couple, this old lady that is, they call her like the church lady, right? She was one of the first there, sits in the front row, but her husband's now gone a little crazy. And he still goes to church, but he falls asleep. He'll be like this.
No.
And then when he wakes up, he'll just start like yelling, or cussing, and standing up. And I'm like, you got to tell me, well, what does he say? What did she go? Well, whatever. I mean, when I say God, he might say, you bald-headed son of a, sit down, to the preacher, he'd be saying that. But they weren't going to kick him out or tell the woman, we don't want you to come back here. So what the pastor thought about was, he said, look, the next time, as soon as he stands up, before he has a chance to start cussing at me, the choir is going to stand and they're going to play a song.
Wow.
Yeah. So he stands up and starts going off, and then he sits back down and goes to bed or goes back to sleep, whatever.
Oh, no.
And I really learned, I was 19 years old, maybe 19, 20 years old when I heard that story, when I went to that church, but it really impacted me because I said to myself, here's what's happened. Somebody chose to cuss at this pastor. And here's what he decided. Maybe we could find a song to sing. And I thought, in life, people are going to cuss at you. And when they do, I hope you have that song in your mind that you can sing.
Oh, I love that.
Last one. Last story, I promise. Last story. So it reminded me lately, I feel like I also, speaking of pressure, and I feel like I've been having a lot of doors that have been closing on me, yet a lot of doors that have been opening as well. Yet I seem to be focusing more on the 2 or 3 that are closing versus all the up team that keep opening. I see you shaking your head, Tessa. Do you feel that way sometimes as well?
Yes, it's easy to focus on what you don't have or aren't getting, that opportunity that's missed because you thought you should have it.
Yeah. So I remembered of a short story I remember reading. I don't think it's true. I think the point of the story was, well, I don't know what the point of the story was, other than to say what are the doors that are being opened. Because the story is about this homeless man, and he's in Las Vegas. And he's walking like where the Strip is, and he sees this person, and he asks him for $1. That's what it was. He walks into the hotel. Good thing I didn't tell the punchline. I almost did. He has to go to the bathroom. He's a homeless man. He walks into a casino. When he walks into the bathroom, like most of the casinos in Vegas, you got to stick a quarter in to get in the toilet. Well, he didn't have the quarter. So he goes back outside of where the casino is, but he goes outside and he asks somebody, can I have a quarter? I just need to use the restroom. Guy gives him a quarter. He walks into the restroom. Right while he's about to put it in, there was a guy that had just flushed the toilet, walks out. So now the door was open, sticks the quarter back in his pocket, and does his business. He gets out of the bathroom, comes out, and he thinks, oh, what the heck? I got a quarter, sticks it in, pulls the lever, lights are going, win $30 million. Next thing you know, that's why it reminded me, the media's there. It reminded me of the story of the Stuart Anderson, right? The news is there. I mean, they can see this guy looks like he's homeless. The guy just won $30 million. So he tells the story on the news, right? How it all happened. And the news anchor woman says, wow, I bet you'd like to know the name of the guy that gave you the quarter. The homeless man says, no, absolutely not. I'd rather know the name of the guy that opened the door.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And think about this. What you do for a living as well, you open doors for people.
It's true.
So let's think about this. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you probably have something that you do in your career where you're able to open doors for people. That's why I wanted to conclude with that.
Oh,
we're done. That's it.
Well, thank you, Reagan. As always, super informative. And I love that you tie in stories. It makes it easy to relate to what you're teaching as well. So thank you so much. And if you'd like to get notifications when Reagan is live, you can actually hit the bell and get reminders. You also can click the link that's in the post to find out more about Fifth Avenue Capital and what projects Reagan has going on. There's a lot of projects back there. And of course, Reagan has his own fund as well that's coming out. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're here on Fridays at noon Eastern time. And thank you so much, Reagan. It was fun. And we'll